Blue Shed podcast. We are students from Gleneagle Secondary School at Coquitlam, BC. My name's Marissa.
And my name is Olivia, and we are here thanks to McCarthy Weisel, founder of the Uplifting Group. We are also joined by Matthew,
Matab,
and Edward, all from the Blue Shed team.
One of the most pressing issues in Canada is food insecurity, affecting 8.7 million people, a record high. Many Canadians rely on food banks, shelters, and community programs just to get by.
Organizations like the Uplifting Group, which provides meals to homeless individuals, help play a crucial role in easing this crisis, as they provide not just a meal, but a reminder that somebody cares. In this episode of the Blue Shed podcast, we'll dive into how you can get involved with organizations such as the Uplifting Group to help tackle issues surrounding homelessness.
We'll also explore the importance of lowering stigma around homelessness over a game of stakes and ladders, as we hear from McCarthy Weisel about how he has uplifted and empowered homeless individuals one meal at a time.
I guess it's just...
Cool. That was good. Let's do it. Dibs on the car.
Okay.
All right. I call Optimus Prime.
Good choice.
Shoot, that makes sense.
Do you want to kind of tell us about what you do?
Or maybe roll.
Oh, roll, and then, yeah, we'll go from there. Let's see, what do we got? What does that mean?
Oh.
What is this? Handshake?
Maybe just re-roll.
Yeah, why not? Okay, 7. 7. Yeah, so a year and a half ago, I started an organization called the Uplifting Group. Originally, it started because I saw a need within the Tri-Cities. A lot of folks, were struggling. And it started out with just me, myself, and I. Really, the idea was to just carry some extra stuff in my car on the way to school, to work, etc. And if I saw someone, stop, say hello, and pass them on a little care package or whatever I had for them. And that was, the initial idea. Naturally, it's grown over the past year and a half, and where we are today is I got about 14 volunteers right now, a couple nonprofit partnerships, and then we do outreach 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned to us before that you have around 5 areas of outreach. Do you want to just kind of like...
Yeah, expand on it. Yeah, of course. So we're sort of founded upon 5 pillars. Naturally, on day one, we didn't just have all these 5 pillars. They've come over time when we sort of saw gaps and we tried to fill them. So our first pillar is the food insecurity one. That was the one that how it all started for me and what I saw originally. And so we do our best to provide a meal of those 4 days that we're down there on Gordon Avenue and in other areas as well. So we provide roughly between 40 and 80 meals per day, depending on time of year. Depends how many people we encounter. Our second pillar, we provide weather-related items 365 days a year. So essentially kind of, depending on what season it is, dictates what we carry with us. So wintertime right now, it's all about keeping people warm. Summertime, naturally the complete opposite. The third pillar that we have is the, I call it like the 99%, 1% rule, if you will. 99% of the time, just wellness checks, making sure folks are breathing, they're healthy, they're doing okay. But then that 1% of the time, we're there to respond should we come across an active overdose. Our fourth and fifth pillars are kind of a bit more of a structural component. So our fourth pillar is family reunification. So a lot of folks naturally lose contact over years with loved ones as they live on the street, and so we do our best to reconnect them with their family should they want that. And then if the family members want updates of their loved one who's on the street, we provide those updates for them. And then the last component, fifth pillar, probably the hardest one, is trying to get people off the street, getting them into housing, into shelter, into treatment. And I just say it's the hardest one right now only because there is so much demand for housing and so little supply that most of the time it's just about getting people on a wait list. But yeah, we do what we can.
How did you start this? Like, what really inspired you to...
Origin story is what you're looking for. I got you. So for me, I always say most things, good or bad, it always roots back to childhood, right? And so since I was 6, my parents started to bring my brother and I out to East Hastings to hand out food. And we did that once a month till I was probably 13 or so. So since I literally can remember, helping others was just what we did as a family and what we were supposed to do. And then, in my teenage years a little bit, I progressed and sort of did my own community service. I did the haunted house for about a decade, as we kind of mentioned off camera there. and raise money for local food banks. So still kind of supporting the food insecurity. But then finally in 2023, sort of how the Uplifting Group came into being was I actually applied for a bunch of shelter jobs, and no one looked at me. No one got back to me. I had no real relevant experience other than childhood, but you can't really throw that on a resume. And so I said, well, if no one's going to hire me, I still want to do this sort of service. Why not I just do it on my own spare time? And what started out as spare time has really evolved into now a full-time job. Unpaid though, I will say. It's all volunteer, but yeah.
So you mentioned to us that you're a student as well. So how do you manage your organization with your student life?
Caffeine is a good help. I will say, I'll be honest. It really comes down to being efficient with time. Being able to manage studies plus, this organization, and then also just a healthy, normal life. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of organization. I will say also a strategy is taking summer classes to offset, a crazy load of classes throughout the year, which helps. But yeah, just a lot of planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories that really that you think back to a lot that just help you keep doing this?
In terms of the work itself, memorable moments of the work, or stuff before that.
Really rewarding moments.
Yeah, I will say from what I've learned myself, and also from speaking with other organizations and getting to know other people within sort of the field. It's the little wins that kind of keep you going. There have been a few times when, a few memorable moments for us are when someone disappears. Now, when someone disappears, it's usually bad, right? If you're talking with someone every day and then all of a sudden they're just gone from the community, you usually think only a few possible outcomes. However, one of those outcomes sometimes is treatment, rehab, whatever the case may be, and getting one's life back on track. And we've had a few of those interactions where someone disappeared. We were, say, serving them literally 4 times a week. We see them every day. And then all of a sudden, 3 months later, they pop back and, they're doing very, very well. And it's like, oh, like I said, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's like those are the people you think about, when you continue to do this work, and you hope that the people you're serving now have those stories later on. So, yeah.
I guess before we get into more into each of the 5 pillars.
Yes.
When you started your whole outreach thing, did you ever imagine that it would turn into something like this?
No.
What did you think?
Honestly, no. I thought, hey, it'd be something I'd do an hour a week, 2 hours a week. But just it's been kind of funny. It's been kind of a running joke in a positive way of every day that goes on, there's more and more things that I'm engaged with, and we're doing, and we're growing, and it's yeah, this started out as, like I said, a little project, and no, a year and a half ago I would not have guessed that we would be sitting here having this interview whatsoever, or anything related to stuff like this. No.
So with an hour a week expected, obviously you have a couple of hours of outreach 4 times a week, but there's also the behind the scenes of that. So how many hours per week on average would you say?
It varies. I think in the summertime we're definitely more busy, but I would say right now 30 hours a week at least. We do about 15 hours of actually being on the ground on Gordon Avenue in the community. But then again, there's picking up donations, working with other nonprofits. I sit on a few committees that, meet regularly. And so, about 30 hours, about 15 behind, 15 sort of on the front lines, if you will.
You mentioned earlier that you had tried to get hired and really get into this whole big organization, but how did it really start to grow? How did you start to reach out to these people and them actually respond to you?
So, that's a good question. So consistency, I attribute that to. Honestly, for the first 2 months, 3 months of doing this, again, I didn't have a single volunteer. It was all on my own. It was just something that I was doing. And in those 2 months, 3 months, I was going down to the local encampment. I was talking to these folks. No one said much more than a hi and thank you and for whatever I was providing that day. No relationships. But after months and months and months, folks started to kind of take to me of going, oh, you're not just this one person that's here to drop off one thing to make yourself feel better. Not to crap on people who do that, but it is a reality that I will say, Christmas time, it gets crazy busy with community service. A lot of people come out, churches get involved, and then all of a sudden January 1st and everyone's gone and you don't see them until next year. So they realized that wasn't what I was there for. That's not what I was doing. And so, it took a couple months to build relationships. And then once I started to build those relationships, people started to open up here's what I need, here's the help I need, can you help me connect to family? And that's how we started to build our pillars. Is once we got in, we saw what the need was, people started to open up to us, and then finally we were able to expand beyond just providing items for people.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I guess we'll move into the 5 pillars now.
Sure.
One thing that I found really interesting was the second thing that you mentioned, so the weather-related items.
Yeah.
So obviously right now it's like there's snow outside and stuff.
Yes.
So what we'd be thinking is like blankets, toques, scarves, things like that. But in like the summertime, what types of items are like priorities?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. In the summertime, we're not providing toques, gloves, obviously, but when we get those 33, 35 degree days, you or I, or any of us here, we can walk into a Starbucks and ask for a cup of water, and they'll serve us a cup of water. If you're unhoused, oftentimes you're not even allowed on certain premises. And so folks don't have the same access that we do to water, one of the most life necessities. And so, we run through, I think this summer we did, I want to say close to 4,000 water bottles. Something that we did differently that we saw, again, our whole purpose is to try to fill gaps that exist. And so what we did differently was a lot of people brought down water, but it'd be 2 p.m. and the water's been sitting in the car for 4 hours. No one wants a warm cup of water at 2 p.m. when it's 30 degrees out. So what we did that was sort of different was every night we froze about 100 water bottles, and then we brought them down at 2 o'clock, ice cold, and so folks could use them as a multi-purpose tool. It was an ice pack for a couple hours. It was then something to drink. And so, we tried to eliminate the heat component by doing that. And we also actually requested a lot of people to donate coolers. And that was one of those items that we were getting from the community, which we were then bringing down. And actually we were bringing down with ice in the coolers ready to go. So that way folks, once we left, could keep things cool for hours after we were gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever, I was just wondering, like you talked about the connection with like the people that you're working with and how you gain that trust, but do you, I assume also you probably connect with the people that you're helping when you're out on the field. Does that do you ever have some of those moments where like you're really able to connect?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of folks that we'll meet them the first time, the second time, the third time, and they're pretty closed off. We're a stranger to them. But after the 4th, the 5th time, and also it's one of those things too where sometimes organizations, they're so busy, and this is something that we noticed was another one of those small gaps, was they're so busy that the moment they say hi to you, it's not how are you, it's okay, we need to just deal with why we're here, what interaction we're having, and then we need to move on to the next patient, person, client, whatever you want to call them. So for us, a lot of it was just, instead of jumping right into, here's what we have for you today, it was like, how's your day going? And it was just generally just like, what's up? Really relaxed, non-professional whatsoever. You strip that all away, and it was just a human, conversation. And we noticed that was one of those big things that, you slow down, you're not in a rush, folks will talk to you, and then it's from those then conversations that rapport, that trust is built, and then you can go, oh, well, we can actually maybe help you with whatever you're having a problem with today. So, yeah.
That's really good. That's actually one of the main things that we had behind the whole Blue Shed project, because we wanted to hear their stories and bring back, because everyone kind of sometimes they might feel overlooked because it's just we just pass them, but it's really bringing back the humanization, human aspect.
Yes.
So, it's really good.
Yeah, I feel like it's really doing something good can it's really easy to get lost in your job.
Sure.
The aspect of just doing the job to get it done, but I feel like that connection probably is what helps the most people.
100%, because a lot of folks too don't have those normal human-to-human conversations. If you're homeless, your extent to your conversations for the most part in your day are service providers that are there to support you in a very specific way, and then maybe folks within your community, other homeless individuals. No one else says hi to you. How's your day going? And sometimes when you strip away why you're there job-wise and you're just there to have a conversation, people really, really appreciate that. Yeah.
I guess we'll just move into the next pillar that you have.
Hit me. Let's do it.
Drug overdose. So he's mentioned the 99% rule. So when it does hit this 1%, is it naloxone usually? Yeah.
So we carry both the intravenous and then the nasal naloxone. Whenever I have a platform, I always share that we very rarely will, I personally never injected the nasal, only because it is 10 times more powerful than the intravenous one. So for us, our policy is that should we come across someone in an active overdose, we do everything we can other than naloxone because if you use naloxone, all you're doing is really putting that person into withdrawal the moment they come back to. So if we can use other methods to ensure that they're still breathing, they're doing okay, and that they don't need the naloxone, we won't administer it. However, naturally, that's not always a perfect world. And so, we will use it. We'll call 911 and kind of follow just normal policy there to ensure the person's okay.
Yeah, so going into that, was there any like specific training or like almost like safety things that you had to like
to kind of do?
Yes.
Yeah, so the first thing I did was I got trained. There's I think the Red Cross has like a program specifically just for naloxone training. You can do it online. Did that right away. But then right after that, I realized that's probably not enough, and so I also did I renewed my CPR. And part of the CPR standard first aid, I think in CPR course, is a segment, again, on naloxone and how to actually administer it. And so those are the two courses that I've done to sort of train on that. And then, from there, you're equipped with the knowledge of how to use it safely and properly.
Yeah, I remember at our school, I think it was in grade 9, we had a presentation in like the gym.
Yeah.
Someone came in and they explained to us how to use naloxone in case we
Cool.
ever like encountered someone that was in need of that, and like how to approach them. Do you think that is like good to be like? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the more people know how to use it, the better. I think also something that we need to shed light on is that not everybody or overdoses are not restricted to homeless individuals. Friends' houses, parties, walking down the street. It goes beyond just the homeless population. Schools ought to. I think it's a safe thing to do. It makes sense. I know there's an organization here locally. I don't know if you guys have reached out to them at all. Naloxone there's a local. I think the founder actually goes to SFU. Her name's Chloe. And they do those courses where they go into the high schools and they teach and they educate on, because it's a skill set. Is that probably who?
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so they do all the high school trainings and courses, etc. And it's a good. Why not have it in the back pocket as a tool, right? Can't hurt to have.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's available at pharmacies, right?
Yep.
I think so.
Anybody can walk into a pharmacy and get it.
Yeah.
It's a good tool to have.
Yeah. In the beginning, before this became an actual thing, I got one just from the pharmacy as well, just in the early days, just to have one with me, right?
Yeah. That was kind of the goal. I think it's a really good idea.
Mm-hmm. Can't hurt. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I guess moving into the next pillar, you mentioned family reconnection. So obviously these stories are private, but what does this how does it even get?
How does it work? Yeah, it's a good question. So, if we meet someone right away, we're not just going to be like, what's your situation with your family, right? No, we build rapport with folks, and once we have a decent relationship, we just mention it. Usually it's just, hey, if you have family, if you want to get back in touch with family, we run that program. Because most other places, again, they're so strapped with what they have to do that family is kind of an extra thing that sometimes doesn't, get looked to. So that's something that we focus on. And so, the way it typically works is once we have a rapport with someone, we'll just mention it. Most of the time, honestly, it's just kind of, oh, thanks. Well, if we ever want to do that, a lot of the time there's usually trauma within families. And so a lot of folks have no desire to ever reconnect with family, which is completely understandable. But a few, examples I can give, obviously keeping everything confidential and private. But, right now we have one individual who their mom is sort of active in their life, not too much, but she'll contact us for sort of weekly updates on the condition of her loved one who's living out on the street, and we can just at least give her some insight into how her loved one's doing. So it's beyond the reconnection. Sometimes it's just also if you're on the street, you don't always have a cell phone, you're not always able to reconnect or update family, and so we can kind of be that middleman to let folks know that their loved ones are doing okay.
Does that just look like when you pass by them, or is there a specific area that you set it up? Or
no, so usually a lot of the time it's a lot of the time it's not actually reuniting them. Oftentimes families sometimes are out of the country, out of the province, and so it's usually just simple emails, simple phone calls. A lot of the time, folks who know about our program, when we're out there, they'll say, hey, can I call mom? Can I call dad? And we'll just let them use their phone. And they can just talk with mom and dad, quick conversation, just to let them know that, hey, I'm doing okay. And so, it's not necessarily the physical reconnecting, more as it is just the knowledge that, both parties are okay and that they're still somewhat in touch. And should they ever want to get in touch, they know they can reach out to us. to do that.
It's really good. There's a lot of touching stories that probably come out.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh no, I didn't.
Okay, what was the last pillar? It was...
The hardest part, the housing.
Right.
Yes, housing and treatment. So, yeah, I'd say it's the hardest just because there's so many, I think one of the most commonly held misconceptions about homelessness is that stereotype that everyone who's on the street doesn't want help, doesn't want housing. They want to live that life. That's their choice. They like that lifestyle. And I can unequivocally say that that's not the case, given my experiences. There are so many people, and I'm thinking of literally in my head right now, multiple people in our city who are on the wait list for BC Housing, for our shelter. But those wait lists go very, very, very long. And so it's difficult to tell people, yeah, we can get you on a wait list. And then they ask the next question, well, how long do you think? And it's like, you might be in a tent for the next year, 2 years. Sometimes, it's sometimes, not always, there's lucky stories where people get in right away. But oftentimes the wait lists are way too long. And so we do what we can. We have one connection with Hope for Freedom, who you guys have already talked to. And so we're well connected with them. And if someone's looking to get into treatment, we can try to set up sort of an intake with them. But the housing component, is probably one of the hardest things, but we do what we can to advocate.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm realizing now that we actually missed the first pillar. So
the food component. Yes. Let's circle back. Yeah.
When you prepare these things, does it look like, I've seen those TikTok videos where they prepare mass amounts of food.
Yes.
Does it look like that, or is it, what do you, is it the bags?
Good question. So so we call it the sandwich program. And so one of the biggest things about outreach, I always say, or at least starting an organization, is you learn by messing up. And so in the beginning, we started with ham and turkey sandwiches. And we thought, those would be fantastic. Those are great. So we learned very quickly that one, sometimes meat is very difficult to chew through, and folks don't always have the strongest teeth, so that's an issue. A lot of folks prefer peanut butter and jam. And so our sandwich program in the Tri-Cities is kind of known as the PB&J program, if you want to call it that. Every morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays, I get up nice and early. We prep however many sandwiches we need for the day. When I say we, I guess it's just me. So I'll prep, like I said, summertime, closer to 80 a day, which that's not as fun to do on your own. 80 sandwiches, it gets a little monotonous after a while, but we still do it. In the winter right now, it's a little quieter, so it's closer to 40 a day. So we prep those. In addition to a sandwich, like I said, we try to make somewhat of a more complete meal. So we also do snack packs. So we try to do a carb, a soft chew granola bar, and some little treat with it. So sandwich, snack pack, plus either water or juice. And then that gets distributed when we're out there. And so folks, at least know that they can have one meal a day guaranteed during the weekdays. And sort of we intentionally do that. Sorry, one more thing to add is we intentionally are there on the weekdays, because on the weekends, the churches, people are, off from their 9 to 5s. And so there's a lot of community support Saturday and Sundays. But then come Monday, everyone's back to work. Everyone has the life that they need to continue on. And so we try to be there when no one else is. And that way we can ensure folks are fed throughout the weekday.
You've mentioned before that you're busier in the summertime.
Yes.
And I feel like that's almost the opposite of what I've expected.
Really?
It's similar to what you just said. It's people are more participating almost in the winter, and so you do more in summer.
So in terms of why it's busier in the summer? Yeah. Okay. So reason behind that is in the summer or in the winter, number one, we have a winter shelter that opens up from usually between October to November till March. And so a lot of folks get inside, whether it's that shelter. A lot of folks just go to other cities because there's more shelter space. You go to downtown Vancouver, you have a much higher chance of getting in somewhere because of the amount of shelter opportunities compared to out here. So what we see in the Tri-Cities, at least, is a lot of people leave the area or couch surfing, moving from place to place just because it's cold. No one wants to be outside. Then though, in the summertime, folks can live outside, and so the winter shelter closes. So all of a sudden there's no emergency winter shelter. And then the folks that left the city, they still grew up in the Tri-Cities. I think this is a tangent, but it makes sense to mention here. One of the other misconceptions of folks in our community is that a lot of people say, oh, these people aren't from here. These people didn't grow up in the Tri-Cities. And I always like to say, it's like, the sad reality is a lot of these people that are on Gordon right now went to your high school, went to my high school. They're from this area, right? And so in the wintertime, they'll leave the city to try to seek shelter. But naturally, if it's survivable, they'll come back to their own community. It's what they know. It's what they call home, right? So that's why we typically see, a mass influx of people come summertime.
One question I have
Yes.
is you said that there's a lot more like housing opportunities in Vancouver
Yeah.
than there is here.
Yeah.
But it's like much more expensive to create those like places for people to go in Vancouver. So why do you think that there's less here?
So to say it nicely, there's politics at play with everything. Okay, and so for example, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, we have one shelter. Like all year round, we have one shelter, 3030 Gordon, which is where the encampment's located. Poco, no shelter, no permanent shelter. Port Moody, no permanent shelter. Well, they have a women's shelter, but it's very, very small. It's not like a publicly accessible one. And so our shelter here, 3030 Gordon, did not open until 2016. So up until 2016, the Tri-Cities had 0 shelters. And so I think there's still, even though we're almost, close to a decade into our shelter here, there's still a lot of opinions that if we don't provide shelters, if we don't feed people, if we don't help them, they'll leave our city. And so on a government level, there is no real interest in providing more housing, because if we did that, we're going to attract more people, and that's bad. That's a bad idea in their minds, right? I don't agree with that, but that's sort of what it is. Vancouver is very different. It's a bigger city. It's, massive infrastructure down there. We have East Hastings, which we're all familiar with. That's been, that's where I started my outreach when I was 6, and so it's been like that for years. And so there's a lot more, supports for folks down there, and with supports comes housing. And so you just find a lot more down there.
Mm-hmm.
So complicated answer, I guess, is the best way to put it. Yes.
That makes sense, though. I was also wondering, though, you said that there's a winter shelter that opens up.
Yes.
So why exactly is there a shelter that opens up in the winter?
So it's okay. So
Year-round?
yes. So something that people probably, when you think of winter shelter, I'm assuming you guys are assuming, like anybody would, that it's like an actual building that people go to, right? That's probably your thoughts.
Yeah.
Like it's like a shelter. It's a place where people go. It's actually not. It's churches that hold it. So churches take a month each to host the shelter. So it's not actually like a building for folks to live. It's a shelter that gets converted at night times with cots laid out for people to sleep. So it's not like a building that opens for 4 months and closes. It's just the kindness of our local churches that realize there's an issue. Government's not doing anything about it. Folks can't freeze in the winter. We need to do something about it. And so they've graciously opened their doors. That's how it exists. But then come April, again, when the weather gets nice, they can't do that all year long. That's not what a church is built for. It's not what it's designed for. And so they naturally close down because folks can survive, and they've done what they can by preventing people from freezing to death, essentially. So, and then that's why, I always say that it's great that they do that, but it's unfortunate that it's come to that. Yeah.
So I guess with each of the pillars of your outreach, how long have each of the areas of it been in play? Like how many years roughly?
Good question. So we founded at the end of 2023. So we're about 17 months in, almost a year and a half now. The first thing that was established was the sandwich program, Pillar 1. That came first. That was sort of the first need that we noticed. So I'd say that's been around since day one. Weather-related items, pretty much since day one as well, because we were founded in like November of 23. We started carrying kind of clothing right away into the winter, so that kind of came right away. The other 3, though, were kind of a little later. So the overdose reversals, that didn't come probably for a few months, but I will say still within the first couple months, I started carrying naloxone on me and, was ready to respond. Family reunification came a little later, so I'd say that's been around for about a year now. It's something relatively new. Similarly with the housing is for the first 6 months, I wasn't educated enough to refer people to housing. But after about 6 months sort of doing the work, I've familiarized myself with what the processes were. And so I'd say everything total has been around for at least a year now. Yeah.
And you mentioned how many volunteers do you have again?
Right now it's about 14, but volunteers come, they go, it changes all the time. But right now it's about 14.
And so are you all certified with your naloxone first aid things, or
So that's another good question. So I recommend to all our volunteers, if you can get your first aid, get it. Not even for this, but just life in general, it's good to have. Same thing with the naloxone training, it's just good to have. However, the way our outreach shifts work is it's 2-person teams. So especially in the winter, it's only 2-person teams. The reason being is if we went with, say, 6 people and we approach one person, let's say that person has experience of trauma, maybe previous assaults, 6 on 1, quite intimidating. No one's going to open up to you. So we keep our outreach to 2 people. And so I'm always on the outreach shifts. I always go on every single one. And so at least I'm certified on every shift, which means they don't have to. But yeah, we recommend all of our volunteers try to get the certification if they can.
And so if it's 2 at a time, does that mean you have 1 volunteer with you?
1 volunteer per shift. It changes a little bit in the summer. We have 3 people, only because in the summer there's way more people, and so it's less. It's very rare to come across just 1 individual. It's usually, like I said, plenty of people. So in the summertime it goes up to 3, but yeah, wintertime it's just 2 people teams. Yeah.
I have like a really off-topic
Hit it.
question.
Yeah.
You said that you guys have like the food program, which you call like the PB&J program. Do you ever like encounter people that can't have peanut butter?
You know what's funny? Everyone's asked. I've had that question so many times.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. It's a natural. It makes sense. It's a good question. We've delivered now. I have the stats. We've done over 3,500 meals, so 3,500 PB&Js. 1 person said they're allergic to peanut butter.
Really?
1. And I remember the guy because it only happened once, and so we were able to get him a few other of our snacks and stuff. But yeah, because we don't ever come across people who are allergic, there's no need for us to make others. Yeah. 1 out of 3,500 is not a, yeah.
Really?
Which I always thought would be weird because if you guys, well, for me in high school, like there's middle school, elementary, and just, no peanut butter allowed in this and that and that. But then you get into the real world and it's like, yeah, I've not met a single person with a peanut allergy other than this one guy. One time. Yeah, I know. Maybe I'm just lucky, but yeah.
She's asking this because I have a nut allergy.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, no.
But that's weird because like even in my elementary school, and that kind of group stayed together. Like some
Yeah.
of them are still together in high school now.
Right.
But I think there might have been like 5 people in my class with a nut allergy.
I knew,
Really?
like, at least 10 people. In,
Yeah.
like, at least my elementary school.
Yeah, no, 1 person out of 3,500, which is not, yeah. So yeah, if we were having more people with that issue, we'd obviously make a substitute. But yeah, it's yet to happen. So yeah, good question though. Great question. Yeah, I know. Yeah, very interesting though.
Well, I guess from this outreach, there's so this is like the out there type of
Yes.
thing, but then you also have all this stuff you do on top of that.
Yes.
So what organizations like have you worked with, and like what other things have you done outside of just the
On the ground stuff? So Hope for Freedom was kind of the first people that took to what we were doing. They really liked that we were an on the ground team that was providing actual items, because there's not many organizations that can provide a meal. That's usually what churches kind of get fall to do and stuff. So they appreciated our efforts and they kind of took us under their wing, if you will, quite early. So we work with them quite a lot. Oftentimes I'm talking with Aaron and Amanda once a week usually, I'd say, on hey, just came across this person, they might be looking for treatment, or hey, there's this new people living here, feel free to check it out. And so we referrals, and then also collaboration, because they are also an outreach team. They have certain supplies they can provide, and so it's a bit of collaborative work. Again, I'd still consider that still frontline type work, but really on the back end, we have a relationship with an organization called the Low Entropy Foundation. They do a lot of amazing work in the community, and they have a thrift store up in Brook Whitlam area. And once a week, they provide us with bedding and sort of winter gear, which is awesome because of how much we go through that stuff. So that's a bit of a back-end relationship. Same thing with an organization called the Immigrant Link Society. And they're really cool because they are a food recovery organization. So stuff that's about to be expired, they collect before it gets dumped. And so about once a month, they provide us with a massive donation of non-perishable goods that just kind of go into our snack packs and just kind of extra stuff that we have. Beyond that, though, we sit on the Tri-Cities Community Action Team, which actually might be somewhere you guys could look into for a potential interview down the line. And they're really cool. The Community Action Team basically was founded right after, I want to say 2016, when BC declared the toxic drug crisis. And so they're basically a group that meets once a month to bring all these organizations together to talk about the toxic drug crisis. So we're part of that one. And then there's also the Tri-Cities Homeless Task Force, which meets once a month. I don't know if you guys have heard of them, but they've just been restructuring right now. And so they meet once a month, and we go to those meetings just to kind of, again, it's a place for all the organizations to come together and communicate. And then the last thing, I guess, is just all the back end work that I have to then do on my own to schedule all the volunteers, and I guess you could say admin work that obviously all has to get done as well. But yeah.
I was wondering, so you said that you make like 80 sandwiches sometimes a day,
Yes.
like just for the day itself.
Just for that day, yeah.
How do you get like all of that,
Done?
like not done, but like also all the material as a...
So funding, good question. So we're entirely community funded. I am potentially going down the route of, once I graduate from my BA, to go the nonprofit status. What it basically means right now is, because we're community funded and we're not a registered nonprofit, we can't write for grants and get government funding, which is fine. We're not there yet. So all of our funding is community based. So my strategy, and the thing that I would implore anybody who's trying to start some project in their community, is Facebook community groups. Those are amazing. That's kind of actually how we really started, going from me to a bunch of volunteers and stuff, is I just wrote up a little write-up, here's what I'm doing, and then I put our address in the thing saying if anybody wants to drop off stuff, we have a bin by the front door, and that's basically how most of our funding comes from. So depending on time of year, like I said, just yesterday we got someone dropped off like 4 garbage bags of clothes, and it's like, okay, time to sort clothes, and now we have all the clothes that we need for the week potentially, just based on people really kind in the community. But to like the sandwich stuff and to run the food, we have a small fund that, again, people donate to, e-transfers, cash donations, whatever, that gets obviously put aside, and then once a week we pull from the fund, and keeps the program afloat. So all thanks to the community. That's how we're funded.
That's nice. And we were just wondering, like, for the future, where do you see like the organization
going?
in 10 years?
That's a good question. So I'm at the bridge right now. I graduate in August. I finished with a bachelor's degree in criminology. Long story short, when I first started going to school, I wanted to become a police officer. That's where it was. Now, not wanting to pursue that right away, maybe slowing down the line, just not for me yet. So I'm at a decision point right now where I would love to turn the Uplifting Group from what we are now, which is quite a small organization, into potentially a nonprofit, where we could really make some impact in the community. Because don't get me wrong, being on the streets 4 days a week, doing what we have right now is great. But if I was able to dedicate my entire life to it, I think, we could grow. And so, to ask the question, where would be 10 years down the line? Potentially an organization that does everything from those first interactions by simply providing a meal all the way to potentially getting people into housing. That would sort of be, the goal, because it seems like a lot of organizations do, like I said, we're doing one. Our organization is all about folks on the street. Then there's Hope for Freedom that does the treatment. Then there's, like I said, every organization has a part to play, but it would be cool to grow into an organization that goes from the time you meet the person to the time they get into housing and they're independently living. That'd be cool.
It's really interesting. One thing, like when you started this, what was one view that you've had that's like changed a lot throughout the experience?
Ooh, that's a wild question. What is one view that has changed?
Or something.
That's a really, really good question. One view that has changed. I would say that in the beginning, I really thought, and this would probably be a naive thing, but being honest, I really thought it was relatively easy to get someone off the street into housing. I thought, like, if they were dedicated and they wanted to make that change, that we could just do that for them. But the one thing that I've learned is just how difficult it is to first meet someone, to get them into some form of stable housing, is almost like running a marathon and doing it blind with a piggyback. You know what I mean? Like, it is such a challenge. It is such an uphill battle that I think that's one of those issues that needs to be addressed on more of a societal issue, because it's not easy for folks who want to make a change in their life these days.
And as like a final note to everyone who wants to help like people that are struggling with homelessness and addiction in the community, what would you say would be like the best thing that they can do to help?
That's a good question. I would say giving your time is the best thing. And so whether you're local to the Tri-Cities, you're from Vancouver, hell, maybe you're listening to this somewhere across the country, educate yourself on what programs exist in your community. and donate your time, because that's one of the most impactful ways. Yes, money's great, donations are great, but contributing your time on a weekly, monthly, whatever it is, basis is really what will make the impact in your community.
I think just maybe one last final closing question.
Yes.
It's kind of hard to phrase.
Okay.
But what's one thing that you feel like people on the streets would want other people to know, like something that's not often seen? Don't
be afraid of them. So many folks tell me, I've heard this too many times for it to now not be something that clearly happens. The amount of times someone's just walking down the street and they'll watch someone cross the road just because of the way they look. And usually it's out of fear that I don't want to get close to that person. What happens if they do something to me? From my experiences, 99.99999% of people who are currently homeless are very kind people with good hearts who've just fallen under hard times. And to not hold fear against them would be one of the most insightful things I would say.
So I think from here we'll let Everett and Matab take over.
Hello, McCarthy.
Hello, sir.
And hello, Blue Shed viewers. I'm Matab.
And I am Edward, and we are going to ask a few more questions.
Let's do it.
So, you talked a lot about the kinds of work you do.
Mm-hmm.
And something we want to ask is, how do you measure the impact of your work?
Ooh.
How do you know if something you're doing is helping? And, can it be the case that oftentimes there's not super tangible impact that
Yes.
you can see?
Yes.
How do you go through those periods?
That's a really good question. I think that, a lot of the time, the way you measure success in this is how many people you get out of homelessness, right? And that's not necessarily what we're designed to do. We're not there getting people. We don't have a treatment organization that we bring folks to support them that way. And so, usually the measurement of success is how many people you get out of this environment that they're living in right now. But our whole goal isn't to do that. That's not what we're there to do. We're there to do the work that a lot of the organizations don't have time to do. We're there to ensure that on a daily basis, folks are doing okay. They have dry clothing. They're physically okay. They're physically breathing. They're not in an active overdose. And so, we don't have the classical tangible results that a lot of big organizations do. So the way that typically, we measure our success, oftentimes are the relationships that we build. That for us is sort of how we see what we're doing is making a difference. When folks see our vehicle going by and stop us down because friend over here themselves has no jacket and they're freezing and they're literally shivering, and we can change that for them on a day, in a moment. I'd say that the way that we measure that is our relationships that we build, and then the new people that we meet on a daily basis, watching them go from strangers to people that, we know their life stories, we know their parents, maybe we're in contact with their parents. Going from a stranger to what we would describe as a friend is our measurement of success.
Would you say that this is something that you more and your volunteers, is this something that you aim for, or is this something that ensues out of daily work?
Right, like is it a byproduct or not, essentially? I'd say that it's definitely the goal. We're, again, I mentioned it earlier, a lot of organizations, when they make contact with someone, their client, it's there for business, and there's a reason that that interaction is happening. For us, we're actively aware. One of the first things that I always share with new volunteers is that, we're not going to go fast. We're there to slow down. We're there to have conversations. If we see the first person and 30 minutes later we're on to number 2, that's okay. There's no harm in that. So I'd say, it's definitely an intended outcome to build bonds, build relationships, because oftentimes once you build those relationships, folks share information that they wouldn't necessarily share with a stranger. And then it's through those relationships that we can maybe impact them on a deeper level. Yeah.
You mentioned those small wins.
Yeah.
Probably around the start of the podcast, and it's actually something Hope for Freedom mentioned as well.
Oh yeah.
And I guess it's just something that's really important for outreach organizations, which keeps them going, and just having those small wins over and over again.
Yeah.
Do you think those small wins, maybe you get a big win in between, or maybe they culminate to a big win? Do you have any like specific moment or like relationship you built that you really felt like, wow, I'm having an impact and making a difference?
Yeah, good question. Great question. I would say that definitely it's more of the small wins. I don't think really as outreach you ever have massive highs. I think it's just the little spikes that really you remember. One that I can share while keeping everything still confidentially private is there still is actively an individual living outside whose mom talks to us on a daily basis, the one I mentioned earlier, and there has been countless times when she has been worried sick and given us a call as she can't find her child who's out there, and we are able to let her know, oh no, we just saw her child 20 minutes ago. He's okay, breathing, just fed, good clothing, doing okay. And on the phone you can hear sort of the sigh of relief. Those are those wins, because without organizations like us on the ground, there's no one else to call. There's no other group that can do that, and will also actively put things to side and just go, okay, if you want an update on your kid, we're going to go find your kid just to make sure they're okay. So yeah, little wins, little spikes that, they stick in the brain. Yeah.
Do you think that's like an advantage you have as like more of like a smaller scale organization? Like big organizations, they don't have the time to like really make those connections.
Yes.
So do you think with the scale you have now, you're able to like make more of a connection? And maybe what's your plan, like if you plan to scale up?
Right. Yeah, so I think definitely the big organizations, naturally, if they have 400 clients and they're in 7 cities, they are busy, and their employees are very busy ensuring that everyone at least is doing okay, and that they have to check in on all their clients. For us, again, we're smaller. We're also, we're not, we don't have big budgets with government oversight ensuring, what their funding is going to, right? We're community funded, which means we can dedicate our time how we see fit and what is needed in the community. So yeah, definitely, I know there's other organizations that will tell folks to look out for us, because they know that what they're limited to, and they know what we can do, and we can do things that they can't sometimes. So they'll try to, look out for us and refer us, if you will. But in terms of the scalability portion, yeah, like if we grow out to being, a much larger organization, say 10 years down the line, I think the only thing that I would say that I would want to keep consistent is to slow down, to ensure that no one is, pushed through a cycle simply to meet a quota or meet, something you have to do. It's if you can't, in a hypothetical, right? If the person, employee, whatever, can't, meet their target, it doesn't matter. It means nothing. You have a connection with one person, job well done. So, yeah.
That's really inspiring. I think reading like the Tri-Cities news article that you did, that connects to like how it began for you. I think it was describing how you were just one time going out on Walmart.
Yeah.
And you filled up your trunk and you're like, this is just something that I think we should be doing. That's like a really cool grassroots idea that I think if the audience or other people like us were to try to begin or start just like you, that's something we can take into.
100%. There's no one stopping you from doing something on an individual level, and I get those questions sometimes of like, well, what would you say if I was just going to start something, whether it's like in homelessness or just anything, whether you like animals, whatever your calling is to help, it's no one's stopping you. Do what you want, and what I've noticed is once I started doing that and I started making a very small impact, I just started sharing what I was doing with the community, like I said, through Facebook, and then folks who had no desire to do it ignored us. But then there was those, 1% of people who that spoke to them, and all of a sudden, now it's a team of 2, now it's a team of 3, and then you just slowly grow, Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to like maybe continue with the game? I think we've rolled it once.
Yeah, go. I'm in the car, so you guys go next.
I'll take Optimus Prime, so you.
All right. 9. 1,
Lucky.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Up the ladder.
Solid, dude.
I'll go 2.
Well, Edward's rolling. You mentioned
Yes.
like organizations, they make sure like everyone's doing okay, like in their
Right.
long list of clients.
Yep.
How do you think, as like a smaller organization, you build towards making sure people are more than just okay? Like I know, personally, I'll share a little bit about myself. I work with like children. I ran like my own after school program, and I
cool.
work with another organization. I coach like multi-sport activities after school. And a big thing is like building a rapport with the children, and especially children with special needs, making sure that you have an understanding of them, and then
Right.
they know they're safe.
Right.
So they can do more than just like be okay, but also like thrive in their environment. So what do you look for when you're building those connections to make sure people are more than just okay?
Yeah, like you said, it's it's great to have a hey, how are you? But then if you're mandated to meet 400 people, you can't get those depth conversations. For us, it's also understanding that if we meet someone new, I can't just dive into give me your childhood stories. Why are you in the how did you get here? You can't start with that. You can't open with that. You need to build those relationships first, right? And so for us, whenever we go out, especially if we go out with volunteers, we'll have conversations actively from if we're, like I said, we come across one person, then we come across the next. In between those people, we'll mention, briefly what the conversation was about. Try to remember either name, nickname, general makeup. That way, the next time we see them, I kind of use it as a trick to really show people that we're actively listening. And so if I meet you today and I was to see you tomorrow, I would try to remember what we talked about briefly, and then that would be the first thing I would say the next day I saw you. So that person knew, okay, this wasn't just a 2-minute conversation yesterday that they had to do. They remembered what we talked about. And it's through those small things really make the difference that, once the person opens up, it's then you can figure out, are they okay? Because, the first time you meet someone, you can give them something to eat, you can get them a jacket, and they're doing okay in that very specific moment. But once you have the relationship open, the word okay means more than just the physical well-being in that moment. It's, well, do you want to get housing? Do you want to get treatment? What's life like with family? Are you local? Are you not local? Do you know this? Like all these bigger questions of okay can only be answered after you build the rapport. And so that's what we try to focus on first. Hopefully that answers the question, kind of. Yeah.
I really like these questions
Yeah.
that you ask. Right?
Yeah.
I'll also add a little a personal thing. Currently, I also volunteer at a hospital,
Oh,
and
nice.
part of what we do is we speak to people, right? And as a person who's probably not the best at talking to people, especially strangers,
Yeah.
what are some questions that you like asking these people that might be able to get you closer, but also allow them to feel comfortable, not also being too maybe invasive?
Like opening questions, like when you're
Opening
first starting.
questions,
I
Or
think
even
once you know
farther
someone,
down.
yeah. I think finding common ground is very good, and I will say honestly too, in this, outreach is very unique in that it can be a job or a volunteer opportunity, but there is not necessarily a requirement for extreme professionalism. In a lot of jobs, you have to talk a certain way, you have to act a certain way. With outreach, you can sort of, to build rapport, speak in a much more relaxed tone, relaxed environment. Sometimes when I'm talking to someone, if they're swearing in how they're speaking, I'll throw a certain word out there too. I'll just meet the common ground, right? If they're upset about something, let's say, again, it's trying to find common ground. If someone's, say, having struggles with, trying to find housing, let's go something super simple, right? I'll usually respond with, yeah, that would effing suck. That would, if that's how they're speaking, you try to get on the same wavelength, because then once you're, it's one of those things where the power dynamic, we try to just eliminate the power dynamic. Both the way we're speaking, but also sometimes the way we are. If someone's sitting on the curb, I will literally sit on the curb. We'll just have a conversation, because it's like, I'm not in some position. I don't want to be perceived as I'm in some employment position, and I'm here to try to fix your problem. That ain't it. I want to learn about what's going on. So I think the biggest thing that we do is we find the common ground. If someone's mad at something, we relate to, yeah, that would suck. I'd hate to be in that position too. And then from there, we try to strip away all professionalism, all power dynamic, to ensure that there's no sense of I'm better than you, type of thing. So I don't know if that would help your position working in a hospital. It's a little different, obviously, but yeah, that's what we do.
It definitely connects, because one of the concepts our leadership teacher has shared a lot is vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right? If you're trying to inspire people, if you're trying to align them with your vision, you cannot do so by presenting a facade, like a shield right in front of you.
Yeah.
You have to be able to, what's a word?
Be vulnerable, I'd say.
I guess, yeah. Just
Yeah,
be vulnerable.
yeah. I mean, like I think one of the funniest things is one of the most common icebreakers is that I have when I meet new people or when we're kind of getting to know people, and I love this because it works every time. So I'm a criminology student. I wanted to be a cop at one time, and I will actively share that how stupid I was in that decision. Not necessarily that I really believe it was a stupid decision, but folks typically don't have a really good bond with police, and so I will open the door to be mocked as a way to joke around with people and be like, yeah, I don't know what the hell I was thinking either. And like the moment you come onto that like vulnerability, you open yourself up and you allow yourself to be kind of messed around with a little bit. It's like, okay, you're one of the same. We're I don't want to use the word shooting the shit, but like we're again the professionalism out the window and we're just having a conversation. So yeah, definitely helps with the work we do.
Do you want to ask the question?
The question. What is that question?
Go for it.
Okay. So, what is a question that you have never been asked about homelessness in all of your time serving and helping the community, but which you think people should ask more?
Oh, that's a really good one. What is a question I don't get asked often but should be asked more? Yeah, let's roll. Yeah. We'll keep playing. Let me think. Let me think on this one because that's a question I've never gotten. Number one. That's good. What do people not think about? Oh, I got my answer. Okay. That's a good roll, by the way. 11, that's solid. Okay, so I really think that one of the most common things that should be asked more is folks in the community typically love to help here and now. They want to make the difference, and we love that because that's what our organization's about. It's making a very small difference in someone's life every day, whether that's clothing, food, whatever. But I think what needs to be asked more within the community is how do we change on a structural level, because I think by having enough voices being raised where we all collectively see and say that this isn't okay what's happening. Tri-Cities has one shelter for 3 cities. Why is no one asking that? A lot of what we do on a daily basis would be eliminated if we had a second or third shelter. If people were inside, we wouldn't be having to provide tents for people. We wouldn't be having to provide 20 blankets a shift or every day we go out there. So a lot of those problems wouldn't exist if we had more wraparound services. And so I think that if as a community we started asking some of the bigger questions, it would go a bit further than just me being asked these questions, and maybe we turn to local government, local policymakers, people that can actually affect real change, because that's the only way that change happens. And I always say one thing: there's something that people typically, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, but one of the common pushbacks to supporting homelessness or being in the industry is that a lot of people make money out of it. A lot of people, high up CEOs and directors, et cetera, in these big organizations, they make a lot of money out of the poverty complex, right, or industry. But something that I always like to say is, I'm maybe one of the few people that run an organization that would love to say that tomorrow, if there was no one to serve, I'd be happy to call it quits. I would honestly be happy to just end the organization tomorrow if we were able to. So the only way I think that's possible is to have enough people ask enough of the bigger questions, because then that's how change is going to happen.
Okay, I think we'll go into one final segment.
Yes.
With Matthew and Olivia, focusing on how maybe others can get involved, like the viewers. And Olivia actually has a story to share about how she's involved with the Uplifting Group, actually.
Cool.
And how she comes with her father to help.
I love it.
Also
donate supplies.
Perspectives on the future.
Yes, love it.
All right.
Cool. Good chat with you guys.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matthew.
And I'm Olivia.
And hi to all the Blue Shed viewers. Alright, so we're back with some more questions.
Let's do it.
Do you want me to?
Okay, so Edward and Matthew, mentioned that I've almost been involved, and I won't say I've been heavily involved, I can't take that much credit, but my dad recently found out from me, I'm not sure if it's from your Facebook groups or if it's from the Instagram, but he's mentioned in my house, and he's like, I'm collecting jackets, I'm going to donate it to this guy who lives down the street, because we're pretty,
close by,
it's not terribly close, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to mention that it's really very easy to just drop off. Like, your house is pretty close by. It's just in West Plateau.
Whistle Plateau, yeah.
I literally drove by, I think it was like at 9, and I just brought down like 4 bags, like
Yep.
some, I think it was gloves, gloves, tubes,
Jackets, I think.
granola bars, jackets,
Yeah.
things like that. So really that's one of the ways that people can get involved. But
Absolutely.
are there any other things
That are needed, I guess.
or like other ways that they can get involved? 'Cause,
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that we always say is if you can't donate your time, follow us on Instagram. That's one of the biggest things. Just keep updated, keep educated on yourself. You know, a lot of the time we'll post things that are happening within the Tri-Cities surrounding, you know, homelessness in the area. But beyond just following us on Instagram, like I said, yeah, we have a bin by the front door that's publicly, you know, public knowledge is out there. You know, the address is out there. So feel free to drop off clothes day or night, or any sort of items. And then we also do have volunteer opportunities. Right now we're not bringing on anybody new this month. But yeah, if you're watching this sometime down the line, check out our Instagram. You'll see the volunteer opportunities through there, and then you can get involved if that's something that speaks to you.
Right. Going back to what you said about your like almost origin story.
Yes, sir.
Going to hand out food with your parents. How important do you think that kind of, and also going back to what Olivia said about dropping off the donations with your father, how important do you think that is for the continuation of programs and organizations like the Uplifting Group?
It's a great question. I think that, yeah, a lot of nonprofits, community-based organizations like us would not exist without the support of the community. You know, I don't remember off the top of my head what organization my parents and then subsequently volunteered my brother and I with, but there was definitely an organization that we were volunteering with when I was a little kid, and yeah, a lot of organizations, us included, would not really exist to the extent that we do without support of the community. And also beyond that, I think too, you know, whether it's homelessness, whether it's, you know, animal rescue, whatever speaks to you, it's very important to educate younger generations on the importance of giving time, giving service, and expecting nothing in return. Because I always say that, you know, without the experience I had as a kid, guarantee everything I do now wouldn't probably be a thing. The Uplifting Group wouldn't exist if I didn't have those experiences as a kid. Because yeah, the value of giving time would not have been instilled in me without those experiences. So yeah, I'd speak highly of them for sure.
I know when I was younger, I often saw homeless people on the streets, and I always felt like I wanted to help in whatever way, and I would always kind of like naively tell my parents, "Oh, when I grow up, I'll be like the richest person in the world," and homelessness, things
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Very childish.
Sure.
dreams.
Yeah. But yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And looking back on it, I kind of realized I left the human like aspect out of it, in the sense that I never really thought about how direct human contribution.
Right.
You know? I was just thinking about money.
Right. Yeah. Money solves everything. Right.
Yeah. So I guess that's something I want to ask. Do you think that is something that drives these organizations, and what really makes people kind of have faith in them? The fact that people are out there and they're giving their time, and it's not just the money that's involved, it's the fact that there are people out there, and even despite not having the money at times, they still give the time and effort.
I would say, yeah, unequivocally so. You know, I can speak to one of our volunteers right now who, she's retired, and on her second outreach shift with us, for preface this, she's never camped in her life, okay? So she's never gone camping. This will make sense as I go on. And on her second shift, we came across an individual who... everything in her world was horrible the moment we came across her. Her tent was slashed the night before, and I'll share the details because it'll make sense, but her tent was slashed the night before. All of her blankets soaked through, everything she was wearing was soaked through, and she was hungry. Now, that's how we came across this individual. The way it ended was we set up a new tent. So our volunteer had this new life skill that she had never put a tent together, so she had that experience. The lady who we were serving got essentially a new home, very temporary home, but a new home, dry blankets, dry clothing, and something to eat. And so we were able to change someone's day from literally complete crap to a much better situation. And while it was good for the person we were serving, it was also an amazing experience for the volunteer because, you know, she left literally I don't want to use the word glowing because that's not the right word, but she left feeling very, very valued in what she was able to provide. She was able to essentially, change someone's day from sundown to sunup. It was a completely different experience once we left, and so it was more than just, well, here's your tent and here's your blanket. It's like, no, we're a team. We're gonna all do this together because you need help beyond just the money, beyond the items. We're not just gonna give it to you. We're gonna help change your environment. And as someone who volunteers and gives her time, that's why she came onto our team. That's what she wanted to do, and doing that is quite rewarding. So very important.
And I think for all of us, when we heard your story, one of the things that stood out so much, and as Olivia and Marissa already asked you about, was the fact that you're a student and you're doing these outreach endeavors. And I wanted to ask, how, for anyone out there that thinks there's a barrier of entry to helping out, or thinking that, well, I haven't gone through these things myself, so I shouldn't be in a place to try to...
Right, I'm not there yet, I'm not ready yet,
For people feeling those kind of doubts and feeling like I'm not good enough to help out, what kind of advice would you give them?
I think I mentioned this a little earlier. I would definitely say that no one is stopping you from doing whatever you want to do on your own time. For my origin story was the fact that, I applied to a few places. No one got back to me because I had no relevant experience, and I'm sure that's all something we can kind of relate to, is applying for jobs and hearing absolute silence. But, don't let the rejection stop you from doing what you want to do. If you're passionate about anything, no one can tell you no at the end of the day. Sure, someone might not pay you for it right in the beginning, but it's something that is of if it speaks to you, if it's worth your time, you have free time. Do it, start it, and you never know. I'm living proof. You never know what a little project in your car and buying some items at Walmart, where it could lead and what impact it could make. So,